It's the bluest room in town. Yeah, they're actually funny, and the guests the sound through the ups and the downs. Yeah, they'll be there waiting for the next time round. To find out what it means, Everton will break your heart, but they're still your team. It's far from doom and gloom, so tune in now and get involved with the Blue Room.
Okay, we are back, refreshed and ready to talk about. Well, it was. I thought that the January in the last season was as bad as it could get for Everton, but this one somehow rivaled it, didn't it? We after the last one where we sacked a manager after signing players and then sacking our director of football, leaving the new manager with no time to really do anything before the transfer window closed. We went and did exactly the same pretty much without actually signing anyone, selling somebody who was among our top scorers at the time. The board stopped turning up to games. There was a statement put out which was in turn sort of used as a way of weaponising, but it was weaponised against the supporters, and it all just got absolutely insane, didn't it? Looking back at that period, Adam, and among that, we lost against Brighton and conceded the most hilarious goal I think I've ever seen.
That one where Tarkowski tried to headbutt the floor.
Yeah, McNeil hit the free kick, Patterson bottled out of the tackle, Garner played the worst pass I've ever seen a professional footballer play, and then Gross dinked it over Pickford, who in turn took out Tarkowski, and then I think Mikolenko tried to slide in and got tangled in the net, didn't he, at the end of it as well?
Yeah.
So we also lost to Southampton. So that made, I think, it twice in 3 games that we lost to the team bottom of the league at home.
I think that was the low point of the season, that day.
But I remember walking out the ground that day, and it was like all the stuff that gone on earlier, the way in which the board had sort of hung the fans out to dry a little bit, and the protest after that game, fans stopping Yerry Mina in the car, and it just felt like this team is done, and we are gonna go this year. Did you get that feeling of existential dread as well, Adam?
Definitely, yeah. That was that my first game back, like that I went back as a fan. It must have been close.
You were on the post-match podcast, I remember.
Yeah, because I was in the Denby beforehand as well, when all that statement came through, and all of us were just going, "Pardon?" It instantly didn't make sense, like right from the start, and then. Yeah, and going to that game, do you know what? I wish Anthony Gordon had been sold sooner, like so they didn't make that stupid tackle. Like
that was something like mentioned on Twitter before, like what were your low-key bad moments of the season, and like 3 people have mentioned that tackle in Southampton.
That's genuinely one of the worst moments of the season. Like I just don't understand how a professional footballer goes, this is the right time to make this tackle and make this quite clearly obvious foul, and then like with. James Ward-Prowse, the best free kick taker in the Premier League, maybe in Europe's top 5 leagues at that time. Like, it was just waiting to ping it into the back of the net. It just made no sense whatsoever. So yeah, I would have been delighted if Anthony Gordon would have just been sold directly after the final whistle there. If they just had anything to stop, fans chasing him down the street, I suppose it would have looked a little bit better. It's as you say, like everything seemed to compound against not even just against Everton, like against Everton's fans at that time. Like that was what felt really what's the right word that I'm looking for here?
But there's a bus welcome that day, wasn't there? And I remember it was a bit like walking out the ground and thinking why are we bothering if this is all going to happen as well?
It. If I suppose disenchanting is probably like as a fan you just felt like, well, why are we getting thrown under the bus here? Why are we getting slated? We're not the ones on the pitch. We're not the ones in the boardroom making the decisions. We're the ones who are turning up every week. Even before this game with like this massive coach welcome. That played a massive part in keeping us up the previous season. Like we're the ones who have been doing that, and suddenly, apparently, we're the problem. And it just felt really wrong. Like you were leaving that game not even just disappointed at the loss. You were just feeling disappointed at everything about the way the club had gone at that point. Like it didn't really feel like Everton anymore. Like that did feel like the time when like battle lines were drawn between Boardroom and fans, and it just never seemed to me like especially mid-January as it was then. Like I remember going home after that game and going, there's no way that a club can declare war on itself essentially and stay up. Like with the way that we were playing and just how toxic it had the potential to get, like there was just no doubt in my mind that like I think that was probably the most convinced that I was that Everton were going to go down, because it was like, as I say, it was not only getting beat by Nathan Jones and Southampton, by the way, which is
his only win.
In and of itself is dreadful.
Well, he also beat the current treble winners elect, didn't he, as well, in the League Cup?
His only win in the Premier
League. we also got a point off that Man City team, and Erling Haaland lost his mind, so,
Do you know what, though? I was thinking, like, you were speaking before about, like, Southampton sacking their manager. Like, I was thinking, in an alternative universe, we could have sacked Lampard before the break and appointed Nathan Jones. Like, imagine that.
I think we would have been better Joneses to take over at that point than Nathan Jones. And let me tell you, I know nothing about football management.
By the way, it's nothing to do with Everton, but I love his pitch to keep the job, effectively insulting all the people that employ him. It was like the boldest move I've ever seen, to just go like, basically everyone above me is crappy, but I feel I should keep the job anyway.
It's not the same round when he said I could have got married a Welsh girl and stayed in my village.
Yeah. It's very kind of man of the valleys.
But I mean, what was your recollection at the time? Because I mean, I totally have got to say as well, we also had the Farhad Moshiri open letter followed by the interview with the fan advisory board, where no one was really sure and he was in the same room as Jazz.
We need a striker.
We promised everyone would sign a striker, and we didn't. I mean, it felt like every day, Paddy, like there was a new bit of Everton circus to latch onto, wasn't there?
Yeah, I think circus is the right word when you look at the January as a whole. I remember from the Southampton game thinking that not only is this a bad football team with kind of serious failings and quite evidently in the middle of a relegation battle of its own volition, but also the ones that survive tend to be the ones that are united, that can present a united front, and Everton were moving in the exact opposite direction, and that was the really worrying, concerning thing throughout it all. It almost felt like the club was imploding, and imploding from within. But it wasn't just. It was almost like, when the Joker is in Dark Knight, the Dark Knight films, it kind of he lobs like the detonators into the hospital. It almost felt like that was Everton doing it to Everton, which was just, it was so bizarre to kind of watch that unfold. But as you say, it kind of progressively went on and on and on, and I suppose the end of the window was chaotic, and they didn't do what they needed to do. But you've also got, as you say, kind of managers coming and going. Danjuma turning up at Finch Farm and giving training gear while he's awaiting on Villarreal to complete their side of the paperwork. Him leaving, him then being about to come back when Tottenham phone and ask him to join there, and he obviously goes there. Moshiri promising a striker that they don't get, which is kind of a fundamental, I think, in this season. One of the kind of the main failings. And all of that, we're led to believe, was because he was kind of assured Danjuma was virtually in the bag. And was
he even a striker?
No, he's not a striker. He's a forward. He's a winger. He's a wide player. I think Danjuma would have made a massive impact, actually, and was probably just about the best they could have got in that position as a loan signing. But just chaotic, turbulent, and a situation almost entirely of Everton's making. And again, going back to the season as a whole, I think one of the themes for me, it's almost been a kind of a self-sabotage. It's been a season, like if Everton had gone down, they couldn't have really had any complaints. It was kind of merited from within the club. And I'm not talking about individual staff. I'm talking about the institution, the hierarchy. It was almost like that. It was they would have got what they deserved in that sense thankfully that didn't happen, because lots of kind of good people would have lost their jobs, and it would have created a kind of a really difficult situation. But yeah, a situation entirely of kind of their own making, I'd say, and kind of self-sabotage. Obviously not willful sabotage at times, but definitely sabotage.
Yeah. It felt like I know Farhad Moshiri has said things that have not turned out to be true at Everton a lot since he came in, and again, that would be quite an understatement, but it felt like then, like what was quite a brittle and precarious like level of trust was just like completely shattered, wasn't it? Like after what happened against Southampton, after what happened with that interview about we'll get a striker, or we need a striker, we'll get one, like it just, and I think that's still the case now. It feels like the fans now are sort of in a situation where whatever anyone says at the football club about anything, like no one's going to believe it all. You know, as much as like, say we got a statement tonight from somebody on the board saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and like they laid out like the best possible forward plan in words you could think of, everyone would look at it and go, well, look who's saying it. And like that's kind of the issue, isn't it? Now, like it's completely gone, and like at times we've like looked at Farhad Moshiri and rolled our eyes when like we weren't in immediate peril of relegation and going, oh, you know, Farhad again, you know, like an uncle at Christmas who says the wrong thing or something like that.
Well, it used to be funny, didn't it? Because it used to sound like kind of Bane was going on TalkSport and Sky, but it's not funny when the club has plummeted to that level, and you can see everything is on the line. You can see relegations there. You can see everything's kind of in front of you. It stopped being funny a long time ago for Everton, I'd say.
I'm sorry, Van, before you go in there. But then, of course, Lampard went eventually. Should have been after the. I mean, the fact he limped on to West Ham was very poor, wasn't it? I think everyone sort of knew at that point that he was gone. I think there was a United Cup game as well, wasn't there? Where I think everyone sort of assumed he'd go after that. And they went and got Sean Dyche had him. And do you know, like just talking about like what that January was like and how bad it was and how we all felt, it sort of like gives me a bit more perspective on like the job he did in the end, and like and how you know, it was not an easy feat by any means to keep this football club in the Premier League, because not only were things going on at Everton, but teams around us were spending money. They weren't selling a key player and not replacing them, you know. And you looked at that squad that he'd inherited and you go, well, we've got one barely functioning striker, we've got two wingers, and we've got a lot of football to be played, and we're 19th in the Premier League.
Yeah. Do you remember before that the weird little interview that Ken Wright and Moshiri did outside the London Stadium?
Yeah.
That was, like, again, that's just another mad bit of the season that's literally just come back to me now. But
they both kind of like blamed each other, like sort of underhandedly, didn't they?
Yeah. And they were very non-committal about Lampard's future at that time, even though it was like, well, I say that, like, we'd all been saying it was patently obvious that he was going to go before then, but like it seemed even more so obvious that he was going to go then.
Do you know what's just come back to me as well? Bielsa, and how he wanted to take over the 21s and live in the top of a shop by Finch Farm, didn't he? You got Google Earth up on Finch Farm on his computer and looked at potential places to live by the training ground. I mean, Dyche kept us up and it was good, but that would have been amazing one day if Bielsa would have come in and took over those players.
He would have took over the first team then. Do you reckon if
one of his
Bielsa would have done
The translator fellow that follows him around everywhere from Leeds.
That would have been interesting.
That would have been quite funny, wouldn't it?
That would have been interesting. I mean, the most ludicrous plan you could think of there, and I suppose thankfully that ruled him out, because
I would have been awful. At the time I was like, yes.
Tatey and Baines. Tatey and Baines in as first team coach. They took like one or two training sessions, didn't they?
They did. And I think the club tried to kind of create this upbeat atmosphere by posting images of them. Like if there's some like a modern day Everton player you can lean on in that situation to just try and help, it's probably Baines or Ferguson.
Yeah.
There's loads of images of Baines on pristine turf of Finch Farm, taking training sessions, and I think they probably expected a sense of feel good factor after that. But like, you just go on the comments underneath, And again, it was just like, sort yourselves out. Just please, just get something sorted. And if Leighton Baines can't kind of dig you out of the mire, then I suppose nobody's going to in that situation.
It wasn't quite Vitor Pereira going on Sky Sports to talk about Everton's interview process, but it was up there. Like,
that was like interviewed himself, didn't he? The job. He's like, well, I've got these qualifications and I can do this.
He felt he got to the Sky Sports stage of the interview process.
That was just incredible. That. But yeah, like going back to the actual original question, yeah, it does kind of sum up just how well Dyche kind of brought everything together quite early as well. Like those sort of ideals that we were seeing in the Dyche team towards the end of the season were quite quickly established from that like first game against Arsenal, even though that was a little bit of an anomaly, I think. But like a lot of those qualities still remains. Like from that point onwards, you kind of knew what Dyche's Everton were going to try and do for the majority of the time, and that's kind of what they stuck to for right up until the end of the season. And the fact that he's managed to do that with not only a disjointed squad with the players signed by about 7 different managers or something like that beforehand, with turmoil going on above him, the fans in, quite rightly in uproar at that point. I think he did well to tread the line at that point, especially in his first sort of interviews that he did. Of it wasn't as if he was like attacking the board from the start, but he was going, well, no, we need the fans with us, and if the fans want to protest, fine, off you go and protest. But when you're in the stadium, get behind the lads, and that's what the fans only wanted to do from the start. And I think the fact that he hit that point very early doors was probably quite important to him, and it did kind of win a lot of fans over to his side quite quickly. And it did manage to spark something for from then until the end of the season, which did eventually manage to keep Everton in the Premier League. But I do think maybe now that we're looking back on it from this point in the summer, you do kind of forget how just shambolic every level of the club was at that point, and how hard it must be for not only Dyche but like all of his staff as well to come in and try and work in that environment, and to produce what they did with, as Paddy was saying before, with a squad which you could definitely say was worse than Leicester's, attacking wise was worse than Leeds, and to keep us up at the expense of both of those teams. It is quite impressive, so fair play.
I think that from very early doors, he exuded a composure and a kind of quiet reassurance. Yeah. And I think that kind of was transmitted out into the fan base, not only the players but also to the fan base. So immediately I felt as though Everton were in better, more capable hands. The peculiar thing about his tenure so far is that it was kind of bookended by 2, I'm going to use the word Dychean, and I suppose we do this with every manager, but kind of very Dyche-like performances. So 2 1-0 wins, Arsenal the 1-0, and Bournemouth the final day. But quite a lot of what happened in the middle of that felt like the kind of the polar opposite of what you'd expect from a Dyche team. I remember watching them at Leicester and thinking, this is absolutely not what I expected from a Sean Dyche team. It's like, it's really open, it's quite chaotic, there's no sense of managing the game, there's no sense of nous or game savvy. It's just bizarre to kind of watch it. It's almost a bit like a basketball game, and probably I'd back Leicester in a basketball game more than Everton, given some of the players at their disposal. After the game, I wrote about how Everton weren't really kind of a typical Sean Dyche team, certainly not a Dyche team from his time at Burnley. But I think what he had in his head was that the squad was so short of options going forward that they had to almost create stuff themselves by pressing higher, winning the ball higher, throwing men into the box. If you've not got kind of one big target man, then you need 3 or 4 little guys to kind of get in and around it. Obviously, the main thing for Dyche was very quickly giving the players a clean slate, bringing them back in from the cold. I mean, Doucouré obviously, Michael Keane comes back into the fold to kind of an extent, but Doucouré is the main one, isn't he, in terms of kind of what he does and kind of how he's used. And I think there he was used very much how Benitez deployed him, where it was you're the first man breaking from the midfield, but you're also the first man from the attack back into the midfield as well when we're defending. And I think that role suits him down to the ground because he's not refined in possession, but he's a runner. He provides legs. I think he's far more tactically savvy than we give him credit for. And actually, without Doucouré, Dyche struggled to balance the team at all. Yeah. You look at the performances when he was out of the team, and they were the worst performances of the Dyche kind of era so far. So a lot of it is kind of Dyche coming in and bringing back somebody like him who's obviously kind of had a massive impact.
Yeah. And even like the Spurs, I know like he got sent off in the Spurs game and we missed them massively for 3 games after, but it was like him missing for that last half an hour at Spurs was huge as well, wasn't it? Cause, you know, they were there to be beaten that night, weren't they? And you could see that when they went 1-0 up and they just sort of like, well, you know, we'll just coast on through here. Yeah. But like, I think when we beat Arsenal, Adam, and like I think we lost to Liverpool, didn't we? And then we beat Leeds and we beat Brentford. Got the odd pointer here and there away from home. And I sort of thought we're gonna be all right here. We're probably gonna coast this and get out of trouble with a couple of games to go. And then it just all started to turn a little bit, didn't it? Again, and you know the 2 games that stand out for me are Fulham at home and Newcastle at home. Where you know Fulham was one where like the team was just like. I think that was probably our worst performance on the Dyche that day. Like just horrendous tactics, lumping the ball forward to Neil Maupay. Had no idea what was meant to be going on. And then Newcastle, it was almost like everyone like threw themselves into it, didn't they? Like, you know, we had the bus welcome again. They had fireworks before the game. Like, you know, Don was back in the starting lineup. We had something quite close to our best 11, and you know, after a decent first half, they just got legged. And I remember looking at that clip of Isak running past Keane and a few others over and over again, thinking, you know, defending like that, you do not deserve to stay in this league. And after that game, it just all felt very, very bleak again to me. And we were in the bottom 3. We had Brighton to come, we had City to come, and it was a bit like, you know, this is going to be tough again now.
I think I have a different view about the Fulham game in particular. In the what annoyed me about the Fulham game was the obviously for the first like 20 odd minutes, Fulham were the better team.
Yeah.
We made a tactical switch, brought an extra man back into midfield, didn't we? Change up the formation a little bit. And for the last, Matt Flusker's just walked in here, by the way. And for the last like 20 minutes of the first half, battered them. Probably could have scored more than the 1 goal.
Yeah. Well, Maupay has a great chance, doesn't he?
Yeah, Maupay has a great chance.
Chances,
Yeah, so like probably should have scored more than the 1 goal that we did, and it was quite obvious that Fulham were there for the taking at that point. Nothing changed at half time. Neither team, from my recollection, changed in terms of personnel. Don't know whether Fulham changed their shape slightly, but it wasn't really that noticeable to me. And Everton just didn't turn up after the half-time break, and that's what really annoys me. Like, for the last 20 minutes of that first half against Fulham, Everton proved that those players on that pitch could have won that game. Yeah. And you know, there's a debate about whether Sims should have started over Maupay, and that I think I seem to remember that was the big overriding point after the game. Genuinely, I don't think it mattered.
That was the game. Was that the game after Chelsea when he scored?
Maybe
it was the 1 or 2 after, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was quite close, wasn't it? But like, I just remember thinking to myself, it doesn't matter. Like, in those 20 minutes, those players proved that they had the upper hand on that Fulham team. They could have got a win out of that game, and they just folded. That second half was, I would agree with you, for the second half, that's probably the worst Everton have played under Dyche. They just completely capitulated. Didn't have, like, that was the only time under Dyche when I've thought those players don't have the belief, they don't have the heart. Like, they just did not, they did not believe in themselves in that second half for some reason. And then the Newcastle game, to be honest, like, I know it might sound defeatist, but like, I was kind of going into that Newcastle game thinking, well, we're probably going to get beat by these. Like, these are really good now, and you know, we don't like to think of Newcastle being that good, but they are. So I wasn't really that concerned about that game. I remember being a bit more concerned about there was a Palace game away in the midst of all that, wasn't there? And I was very annoyed that we didn't win that game because
they were not arse were that day.
There was a lot of conjecture from Everton fans going into the game saying it's a must win, and then when we didn't win they were going, oh, it's a good point. Very similar happened when we went to Leicester and we were saying oh, this is a must win game, and then like when we didn't win there were a lot of people saying it was a good point. Now obviously in hindsight the fact that we went to Brighton and won made that a good point, I understand, but at those times I remember just being really annoyed.
Yeah. It was only a good point because Mason Holgate did what everybody expected him to, apart from Sean Dyche. And got sent off.
Just before you go into it, like as well, I was going to bring that up. Like before the Palace game, at the start of that week, we'd Matt Flusk, we'll get him in. We're talking about the very end of the season, mate. So it's some positivity coming up. But I was just saying to Paddy there, like going into that Palace game, it was the night before. Chairman Bill did that statement. The accounts had come out that week again with Chairman Bill on, and he's spoken about how he loved that Leicester game and the Palace game from last season, and like the off-pitch stuff had like simmered for a little bit in the build-up to that, and like under Dyche it's sort of like gone to the back a little bit. There were protests, but it wasn't like full vociferous in the ground like it was after the Southampton game. But it all kind of felt like that was bubbling up again around that point, and it was a bit like, oh, the wheel's going to come off a little bit here.
Yeah, well, I think the timing of it's the main thing. Yeah. I mean, he's obviously well within his rights to push back on whatever he wants to push back on and kind of have his say.
Just Bill.
Chairman Bill. On kind of big important issues. But picking the Friday before a really crucial game to effectively push back on what kind of a fan group had said about him was utterly bizarre. Timing of it made no sense whatsoever, and it felt like another sideshow, a little bit like the Southampton game felt like another sideshow ahead of a really important fixture. So it's difficult in that situation, isn't it? You look at it and you think that all focus should be on the pitch, should be on what's happening. You don't want the outside noise, but again they've created the outside noise. They've almost harmed the team in kind of taking that approach. So I mean, I thought that was as bad, more or less, as what we saw against Southampton. Just purely because of everyone went into that thinking Everton need to win this game, or at the very least not lose it, and then you get kind of statements less than 24 hours before the game. It's so strange.
Matt, we're going to bring you in here. How did you feel at that point in the season about everything? That was before the Newcastle game, and I always remember you messaged me about this the other day, saying, I said that you said after Newcastle we had a 1 in 5 chance of staying up, and I was like, God, if Matt thinks that, then we really are in the shit at this point.
1 in 5 chance?
Well, the numbers were the numbers at that point, yeah. It was 80% chance, wasn't it, to go down. But no, at that point, I mean, I pretty much felt in the last half of the season how I felt in the last half of the previous season, which was, I knew there was a possibility of it, but my philosophy is I don't stay miserable longer than I have to. So up until it actually happened, I wasn't going to let myself lose sleep over it. And that's Southampton game about that statement. I thought that before the Southampton game it was outrageous, and like I'm sure you got into that. I just thought that Chairman Bill's statement was grimly hilarious. It was just so cartoonish.
The fact that he just didn't take any sort of criticism at all. He was just like, any single bit of criticism that I can fight back against.
Do you know what, like I heard people saying
it was the question mark, exclamation mark sort of thing.
It was a stream of consciousness, like Kerouac or something. It was really bizarre. And there was like constant ellipsis in it, and I'm thinking like, what's this?
I remember people saying at the time, like, oh, a PR person's written that for him. I'm like, no. Like, you could hear him saying it in your head as you read it.
A dramatic writer has written that, and there is only one famed dramatic writer at the club.
Did you see the one Levy put out soon after? And it was from Daniel.
From Daniel, that was it.
Not Chairman Dan.
Yeah, I almost expected like an XO after. It's like, what the hell is going on?
The only possible ghostwriter of that statement was Richard Keys. It was that off the wall.
But I mean, that was mad. Let's finish off. Like, obviously, in the we've spoken about Bournemouth quite a lot in the week, so we won't delve too much into that. But the game which kept us up, Adam, I think, really, obviously, was Brighton, wasn't it? You threw your phone at me. Oh, Matt's not agreeing. We'll come to Matt in a minute. But you threw your phone at me when we scored the third goal.
Not deliberately. Like you've
I failed.
You've
to catch
twisted
it.
that.
Yeah,
You've twisted that.
But I mean, it's just mad that it's even happened now. Like watching Brighton and every game after that, thinking, bloody hell, these are such a good side. How did we beat these 5-1? But yeah, I know. It's just like, but like, just everything was right. You know, from the early goal.
Yeah.
Allowing us to sit in and spring on the counters. That McNeil, Decore having the best games this season. It was just, you know, Dom was amazing, wasn't he, in that first half as well? He played so well. Like, just
don't try and explain it. Some things
just
aren't.
Can you explain it or not?
No, legitimately, no. Like it was just absolutely nuts. Like, the best counter-attacking performance I've seen Everton produce in probably all my time watching the club. Like it was absolutely, because we've had like snippets of that like counter-attacking football over the years. Like the one that always gets me is like, you know, when Lukaku scored in that 1-1 against Man City. That was a great bit of counter-attacking football.
Wolfsburg
away.
Great counter-attacking football on display there. But to do it so consistently in this, like we had Dwight McNeil dancing around their keeper and celebrating before he'd even put it in. Like genuinely, like. That is insane. Like, could you imagine being like one of like well, for now, like a Leeds or Leicester fan watching that and just going, oh no, like oh no, like what on earth has just happened? Like that's it. Like so, obviously, like we look at the fact that, you know, in 94 and 97 we had some absolute screamers on the final day that have saved Everton. We had an absolute screamer on the final day this year to save Everton, but to go to Brighton who like comfortably finished Europa League.
You guys alright for a drink?
Alright,
yeah, we're alright. To go to Brighton, who've like comfortably now finished Europa League, and to do that to them, which, you know, I don't think any other side in the Premier League has done that to them this year. Like I've not
lost at home many times.
I've not researched it. Like maybe somebody like beat them heavily before, but like to do that against them really just like humbled them tactically. Really, I know obviously Pickford pulled off some incredible saves in that second half because, you know, he's Jordan Pickford. At the end of the day, he's going to do that. But Brighton defensively just looked absolutely shambolic. We made them look shambolic defensively. Like every time Everton went forward.
They had played on the Thursday before.
Well, even but even still, like I seem to remember they made a few changes, didn't they? They made
McAllister was on the bench.
Yeah, they made 4 or 5 changes to the team. Even then, though, the team that they put out, I remember being nervous before the game going. Oh. But yeah, as you say, like so many players just put in fantastic performances there. And
coming back into the team.
At what point did you actually think Everton were going to win the game? Because I didn't settle.
5-1. Genuinely,
I didn't settle on it until about 85 minutes in.
I'd thrown my phone across the pub at 3-0. Like, just to explain myself, it was when it was on that third goal, wasn't it? So like we had the opportunity to score and then we didn't, and then the move like escalated for a further like 10 seconds, so I had my phone in my hand already because I was just like mid-text and I'd like, because the move had kind of like broken down and then like restarted, I kind of just lost my grip on my phone.
The goal was a surprise, wasn't it?
Yeah, the goal was a real surprise, so like I just like quite literally chucked my phone. So I did just quite literally chuck my phone across the pub as soon as that went in. So yeah, I just quite like to explain myself.
It's funny, isn't it, how kind of Evertonian pessimism works? Because at 3-0, I'm thinking if they score within the first kind of 10-15 minutes, this could end up 3-3 or 4-3.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not based in any kind of rational thought, but it's just what goes through your head.
Even when they pulled one back to make it 4-1, I was like...
I had that as well.
There's still a lot of time left.
I was thinking, if they score a second before 85, then they've got probably about 10 minutes to get 2 goals, and Everton can definitely concede 2 in 10 minutes.
Do you know what went through my head when James Garner missed that chance to make it 4? Yeah. Dembele against Liverpool
Yes.
in the Champions League when everyone was like, he should have scored to make it 4-0. They're going to come back and win 4-3 now in the second leg. It's like, you're going to be our Dembele lad. But Matt, you didn't think that was the key game in keeping us up?
No. Leicester. If you look at the context of like the last game and everything like that, like that was the moment in the actual game, yeah. Like, because if we go and lose that game, if we go 3-1 down, we don't come back to draw. We know that much.
Yeah.
So they get 3 points, we get none. So instead of being 1-1, instead of being par, they're 3 ahead of us then, and then we have to go into that Brighton game staring down the barrel. And I don't think we pull out that performance against Brighton. I think that draw set it up.
Yeah.
So I think that is, I mean, mathematically it was the key game because that's what gave us that little tiny sliver above Leicester to get over the
Goal
line.
difference above Leeds as well, which took the pressure off a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, but then that was just the one for me. Like every way you look at it, the mathematics of it, and just the flow of it going into the next game, we would have been a lot lower than 20%.
Didn't they lose like 5-3 to Fulham that day as well, or something mad like that?
Yeah.
Leicester.
Yeah.
They got smashed, didn't they?
Yeah, that was a turning point of the day.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
even then, wasn't that game like 5-1 or 5-2
Yeah,
at some
We
point?
were there like salivating over the
Yeah.
goal difference shift, and then they just keep chipping away more. Going,
Yeah.
no, don't.
Yeah. Well, it's only a shame that, like, because Forest play after us that day as well, and Forest,
Yeah, they beat
Forest
they
won.
4-3, didn't they?
Yeah, like that was a real back and forth game. It would have been, like, looking back, it would have been better if Forest had lost that, but you know, it's being a little bit greedy now, isn't it?
Yeah.
One of my abiding images from the season doesn't even involve Everton. It was when I think it was Leeds were playing Liverpool,
Yeah.
and I was watching the game, and I let out a kind of a whelp. So my girlfriend's in the other room. She turns to me and says, "Have Leeds just scored?" I was like, "No, Liverpool," and she was so confused. she just couldn't get her head around me wanting that to happen. And I was like, "This is what Everton have brought us to."
How many games did we have to cheer them on specifically in this season?
Two at minimum.
They went to Bournemouth as well, didn't they, and got beat?
Yeah, but then Salah put the penalty over, didn't he? Against
Yeah,
them.
but they
Yeah.
lost, didn't they? We wanted
Yeah.
to win that game.
To win that.
We wanted to win
It
against
was
Leicester.
Leeds and Leicester were the two.
Yeah.
Merseyside. Was it that fella said on Twitter, like, me and my dad are sat here watching it, and every time the ball goes out, we're going, ball!
I saw somebody on Twitter say it was like the best feeling in the world watching like a contentious decision.
Yeah, no, it's going to go.
Knowing it's offside, but it's gonna go for us here.
Yeah.
It's the Reds.
Are there any other moments that stand out from the season, just that were a bit mad? Like I sort of hinted at before, but Mopé not being able to play against Leeds and everyone fuming when, probably in hindsight, he does a bit of a favour, really.
He usually feasted against Leeds as well, which was annoying. I thought if we had that game, because if you see like the pictures of him when he was at Brighton and even before
giving
that,
loads to their fans,
giving them the whole, what's it called, Christ the Redeemer pose.
Yeah.
It's too bad we didn't get that, isn't it?
Any other weird moments that stand out from the season?
Can't remember before the World Cup, innit?
Yeah, we've beaten Western Sydney Wanderers 5-1 in Australia. Anthony Gordon hat-trick.
I forgot that we even played in Australia.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
Who was it that was kind of paralysed on the floor when Bournemouth scored a goal in the Premier League game? And it's just like it was the most obvious
Was it
foul
Michael
ever.
Keane?
Oh, yeah, it was. Yeah.
Was it Michael Keane? Yeah.
He was just kind of like lying prone on the floor as Bournemouth scored, and everyone's like, "Well, yeah, this is obviously going to be disallowed," and then they just waved it on.
We had some weird VARs as well, didn't we? Van Dijk nearly taking an on his kneecap out and
Yeah.
not getting sent off.
Who tackled Idrissa Gueye
Oh,
against Fulham?
Mitrovic.
Yeah. That was quite a bad one. Yeah, like I was genuinely shocked when Lucas Moura got sent off against us. To be honest, because that wasn't
Yeah.
that, like that's got to be like the first
Yeah,
time in like
massive
2 years
streak,
that
didn't it?
somebody
Michael
had been.
Keane doing that as well, by the way.
That goal was insane, wasn't it? Yeah.
Is that like that is the most conflicted I've ever been about an Everton goal. Genuinely, because it went in and I was like instantly made up, and then I was instantly just like so annoyed that like he gave away that penalty. Like it was his fault for that penalty in my eyes, and I was just like,
Were you like, oh, he's going to be in the team again next week now after that?
yeah, I was a bit like, oh, but like. That's probably the most surprised I've just been in an Everton goal. Like, Of all the people to take aim from 25 yards, I just did not expect Michael Keane to just go, "Do you know what, I'm just going to ping this in."
Yeah. Shout out for Yerry Mina falling on Jordan Pickford as well against Bournemouth late on. That was absolutely fantastic.
What about the one where he was like pretending to bite Dom Solanke?
That was weird.
It was so strange.
The whole Dom Solanke situation was very strange. I don't know why he pulls over Pickford in that scenario. Like I don't know what he's trying to do. Is he just trying to go, "Oh, I'm ex-Liverpool"? Is that what he was trying to do? Yeah, a bit weird. Shout out for Seamus Coleman, by the way. His goal against Leeds.
Still not sure he meant to.
He did.
No, he
He did.
He
He did.
No, weird,
That you told.
weird moment, City away. Unless it was Godfrey, wasn't it? The first player to absolutely rattle Haaland this season.
And Haaland's kind of like...
And he should have been sent off and all.
That
was a stonewall of that.
Haaland and De Bruyne, wasn't it? Like, had quite contentious one, shall we say.
Yeah. I mean, that in itself is a mad moment. One of only 2 teams to take points at the Etihad this season.
Wasn't Brentford, is it?
Wasn't Brentford, yeah.
Brentford.
That is mad. Yeah.
I love Haaland's face that day.
He was fuming, wasn't
It was. There's one video of the two of them in a corner, and his face is like congealed. It's just fantastic. It's absolutely
Brentford,
brilliant.
and presumably not one of our players bet on us to bet on us.
You say that now, he's been found guilty.
Do you know what? Unless anyone's got any more, we will leave it there. I hope you're still all feeling quite happy after going through that again, because everyone was in a great mood before this, and it was grim at times, but we made it through together. So cheers to Adam, Paddy and Matt. That has been your review of the season. We can finally put it to bed now and start talking about transfers and next season and how we're going to be amazing. So we will leave it there, but off the top of these, we'll catch you again soon.